Hey, it's your boy B3 back with another unedited phone video because his camera isn't working. What up? Uh, so yeah, we're back with some more TTRPG stuff. I could have probably made this a podcast episode, but I don't know if it'd be long enough to really justify it. So I'm going to make it a video. I don't do as much TTR. I do like almost no TTRPG video content anymore. It's all for the podcast. I just put it all into the podcast. So I figured you guys deserved a little something on this platform. But if you like my TTRPG content, opinions, etc., definitely check out the Tabletop Recap podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Anchor, Pocket Casts, anywhere you can do podcasts. Tabletop Recap. But today, we're actually going to talk about tabletop role-playing systems other than Dungeons and Dragons. Because it seems like every time someone wants to run a non-medieval fantasy game, they just do tons and tons and tons of unbalanced, unfunctioning homebrew in order to do that. Like, we're going to play a D&D game, but I want it to be set in the modern world, and there's no elves or dwarves or magic, and it's going to have, like, you're going to be fighting Nazis, but we're going to use D&D. Don't use D&D for that. There are other systems made for other genres and time periods and stuff that you can use. And all you have to do is learn the game. You don't have to basically write an entire system. So, just game masters, do not be afraid to ask to introduce a new system or learn a new system. Same with players. Players, do not be afraid to switch systems. My friends tried out Call of Cthulhu and they loved it. Okay? If you want to introduce a system, whoever is introducing the system should probably GM for it, take on the financial responsibility, as GMs often do, and also probably run a one-shot just to get everyone used to the rules and the concepts and everything. That's what I usually do. And I have several systems that I've used, and some I even haven't used. So if you want to do a fantasy game, you do have Dungeons and Dragons, but you do have other options if you don't like Dungeons and Dragons. You got Pathfinder. This is just a module from first edition. I don't have the rule book or even the quick start rules. This is just some free RPG Day stuff. Pathfinder is a spin-off of Dungeons and Dragons. First edition was just the 3.5 rules. That was all. Because the 3.5 rules can legally be used by anybody, but I prefer skill-based systems, personally. And Pathfinder, it's just, basically Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 with some tweaked lore and stuff. It's come into its own a lot more in 2nd edition. And I hear it's good. I think it's a little more complicated than 5th edition, but if you think 5th edition is too simple, Pathfinder's probably the game for you. Because it's really also medieval-based and stuff, I hear. Let's say you want to play a fantasy game, but you don't want to play medieval. Oh, medieval fantasy is like the most common, and it's insane. It's always medieval. It's just wild, Why not some other ages? Oh, what's that? Chaosium has a fantasy game? RuneQuest? And it's Bronze Age? That's pretty cool. I'd much rather play Bronze Age than medieval. Like, much rather. It's way more unique. And that's from the creators of Call of Cthulhu, so if you like Call of Cthulhu, you might want to check it out. You can get free quick start rules, which comes with a free adventure as a downloadable PDF from DriveThruRPG. I do have it. It seems pretty cool, actually. And then let's say you want to play for a specific fantasy franchise. Here's the thing about TTRPGs and fantasy franchises. Lots of really popular fantasy franchises have their own TTRPGs. I think a lot of people see making a fantasy TTRPG as less of a risk because that's what TTRPGs are known for, fantasy settings. So You want to play a Lord of the Rings Dungeons and Dragons game? There's a Lord of the Rings system. You want to play a Witcher Dungeons and Dragons game? There's a Witcher system. Like, you want to play a freaking I had another one on the tip of my tongue. I forgot it. Conan. You wanna do a Conan game? There's a Conan system. You know, there's so many different systems for so many different just fantasy worlds. Just knock that all out. And if you want to play a fantasy world in the far future, Starfinder is probably perfect for you. It's literally just Pathfinder, but in the future. So it's got like the same lore. So if you're already familiar with Pathfinder, you don't have to learn as much new lore. It's still got magic and like fantasy races, gnomes, elves, dwarves, they're all still there. I think elves in Pathfinder might have already been aliens anyways. Why is that light flickering? Ooh, need to check on that. That could be dangerous. Wow. Pretty wild. So yeah, there's that. And that kind of also helps us transition into sci-fi systems. I've actually tried to make D&D a sci-fi system. And I just if you want to remove the magic, it's almost impossible, dude. Like, if you want to kind of make a magic and science fused world, just run Eberron probably. Just use the Eberron source book, you'll be fine probably. But if you want like full science, there's several things to do. Usually, most of the sci-fi-ish TTRPGs are like in space, right? You have my main one I would recommend, Traveler. Traveler's great for long campaigns. It's got some good rule sets and stuff. If you want to play Traveler, you got to buy a lot of books. That's one downside, like more than a lot of other TTRPGs, maybe even more than D&D. You got to buy a lot of books for Traveler. There's also the Firefly system. If you get that, you'll probably want the PDF because I think the physical books are worth. Now I saw one for over $100 the other day. I have a friend who has one, but I don't hang out with him anymore. And also Tiny Frontiers. Tiny Frontiers is kind of a spacefaring TTRPG, but it's more designed for one-shots and quick play. Like, it's kind of a TTRPG just designed for like people who are hanging out, and then one of them goes, "Hey, does anyone feel like playing a TTRPG?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." You whip out Tiny Frontiers because you can just make and run a game like so quickly. It's full of quick play scenarios. Speaking of, Tiny Frontiers also has a kaiju game. Ever wanted to play Pacific Rim as a TTRPG or Godzilla, King Kong, anything? Well, here you go, and you got mechs to fight them in. This is obviously supposed to kind of look like Optimus Prime, I think, and this is very much supposed to resemble Godzilla. I think it looks a little more like Bimular, actually, but I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be Godzilla. You can't see a blue beam effect and not immediately think Godzilla. That's why I'm against kaiju having blue beam effects, because it's just so iconically linked to Godzilla. It's a little purpley, actually, I think, but still. And that looks just like Striker Eureka. But I haven't got to play this yet. My group, I don't know how to introduce this to my current group. I think this might be something that I just play with people to maybe help get them into TTRPGs, which Tiny Frontiers is great for, actually. And I have some kaiju friends. Actually, my buddy Creation Zilla, shout out to the YouTuber Creation Zilla, he's starting a kaiju podcast. I think playing a game of this live on the podcast would be really fun. I'm going to pitch that to him. But yeah, Tiny Frontiers Mecha and Monsters, if you want like a kaiju or mecha game, that's cool. There's also like Battletech Mech Warrior TTRPG. I haven't played it. Karen, the Manager Slayer, really wants to play it. She and her husband are big mech people. Kami. Huge mech people. I'm not a big mech guy, but I love kaiju. So if the kaiju's there, I'll take the mech. So yeah, I got to get this run. They'd probably be more willing to run this than my main group, actually. I should bring that up with them. But yeah, that's a lot of the good like sci-fi systems. Pretty fun stuff. Let's actually move that Pathfinder module over there in my module stack. But Now I want to talk about, because Tiny Frontiers actually kind of was supposed to transition me into more kid-friendly systems. If you want to run a game for kids, 5e is not terrible for kids, actually. 5e is easily the most simple edition of Dungeons and Dragons, and kids are smarter than we adults give them credit for. They absorb information so easily. They're smart. Uh, but I think Tiny Frontiers and also 5th edition would actually kind of be fine for them. But here's a TTRPG literally made for children. It's a fantasy game. My Little Pony, Tales of Equestria. Now, before you all groan, I've had people tell me this shouldn't be a TTRPG. And I'm like, I'm sorry, are women and children not allowed to play TTRPGs? Because it's not your specific tastes, it shouldn't exist? Shut the fuck up. Just be quiet, gatekeeper. But it's very simple. It's very fun. I have played it. I have run it. I will be running. Actually, for the podcast, I'm going to be reviewing this book. I'll be reviewing the system itself, and I'll be reviewing every single officially released campaign and module for this as well. I'm going to do all of them because there's not that many, but there's enough. It's a very wholesome game. Your characters can't technically die. They just run out of stamina and pass out. And I know a lot of adult fans would be like, oh, that takes away the stakes. And it would for an adult player, but you ever killed off a 10-year-old's first and only TTRPG character? Do you want to be the DM that does that? So, yeah, and let's say your kids aren't into ponies, which is fine. I'm a bit, I have no problem with ponies. I grew up with horses, so I don't really see this as much of an effeminate thing as a lot of other people. And even if I did, I'd still be 100% fine with it. Gender roles, am I right? But you can just change the ponies to humans. Just reskin them. That's all you have to do. Just reskin them. And also, this game has supplements and stuff. You can get the bestiary and the movie sourcebook, and those have different races you can play as. Play as like cat people and stuff. People love cat folk. I think that's a race anyway. I think that one's in the movie sourcebook. Is Baby Buffaloes 1 2? I don't know. Hard to remember, especially since I haven't read them. Boom. That was supposed to be a dab. I suck. But yeah, it's a very fun game. I think kids will enjoy it. If they don't like ponies, just reskin it. It has very simple and easy to learn lore. If you just watch the first 2 episodes of the show and the episode where Twilight becomes an alicorn, that's all you need to know. It's actually it. But it's a fun system. Great for kids. If they don't like My Little Pony, just reskin it. You're done. And if you know any other good kid-friendly TTRPGs, let me know in the comment section below. But actually, I don't think D&D 5e is that bad. Now we're going to get into my favorite. Horror. Ooh, you gotta love it. There are some horror ones that I haven't tried or anything. And you can run a horror game in lots of different systems. Like D&D has horror stuff. Like Ravenloft Curse of Strahd, Rime of the Frost Maiden. Those are horror games. Those are. They're horror games. But what about a system that where there's the stakes are super high? If you're running a horror game, it should be easy to die. It should be easy for the player characters to die. And it's not that easy for them to die if you're running a horror game in an action-adventure system, because the deck is stacked pretty much in their favor. You need a system where the deck is not stacked in their favor if you really want to run something spooky, scary skeletons. And my favorite TTRPG system of all time is perfect for that. Call of Cthulhu 7th edition from Chaosium. Call of Cthulhu, in my opinion, is the best TTRPG. That's subjective, of course. The most popular is, of course, D&D, but this is easily one of the most popular. Maybe even like the third most popular. Like I'm thinking like D&D, Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu in my mind. This game's been around almost as long as Dungeons and Dragons. Uh, it's got big names on it. Sandy Peterson, Mike Mason. You might recognize those names. Those are some big TTRPG names. It's a skill-based system, which are my favorite systems. I prefer skill-based over level class, like just 1,000%. There's such great rules like chases, like chase rules for chases are such a great concept. Oh my god, I love it. That should be in D&D. I think D&D should make chase rules a lot like Call of Cthulhu and put them in whatever the next edition is, or in a supplement or something. This is such a good book, and this is the Keeper's Rulebook, which is the DM book, and then there's also a Player's Handbook, which I do have, called the Investigator's Handbook, and they're better written than the Dungeons and Dragons ones, and any TTRPG GM rulebook worth its salt comes with at least one adventure. D&D doesn't, because they know they don't have to do it, you know? But I mean, like, look, here's an adventure right here. Dope. It's got maps, it's got art. That's some dope art. I love it. Every time I see this page, I'm like, dang, that is nice. I love that art. Call of Cthulhu is my preferred system. I don't even use Lovecraft's monsters. I actually wrote a lot of my own. And on my Patreon, you can actually get my bestiary that I wrote, my monster manual for Call of Cthulhu. It's much shorter than originally intended, but that's because I decided to just include it in Patreon instead of releasing it to DM's Guild or whatever. Miskatonic Repository, sorry, not DM's Guild. It's called The Keeper's Menagerie. It's got like Bigfoot and gray aliens, cyborgs, gremlins, Hopkinsville goblins, things like that, you know, like cryptidy stuff. Very, very cool. I definitely think you should get it. It's in the $10 tier, because the $10 tier has downloads, but in the $10 tier you also get like poll access and giveaway access and all the exclusive videos and pictures, behind the scenes, exclusive stuff. All that's in the $10 tier, and that's the highest tier, so you get everything. And after that, shameless self-promotion. Yeah, and you know, there's also action-adventure games. Most of the games I've mentioned are action-adventure games. I feel like most TTRPGs are action-adventure games, because most people want to play someone who's better than their real self in some way, and physically is often the way people go. I prefer to play someone maybe not physically stronger than me. They always end up being physically stronger than me because I'm a wimp. I'm a pot-bellied, thin-armed wimp with a big nose. And I just, you know, I always prefer to play someone who's like really smart or really successful in things. In Call of Cthulhu, you basically just play as regular people with jobs, and then the monsters come, and it's not balanced. But that's why it's so good. Since we're transitioning into action-adventure games, you can turn this into an action-adventure game with the supplemental book, Pulp Cthulhu. It gives you stuff for playing pulp stories, you know, kind of Indiana Jones, Edgar Rice Burroughs, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle type stories. But I'm kind of hesitant to introduce Pulp Cthulhu to my group, because I don't think they'll ever want to stop using it. Once they become strong enough to defeat the horrors physically and stuff, then I feel like it's gonna get them a power trip, and they're not gonna want to stop using that supplement, which will take a lot of the horror out of the games that I want to just be horror and not action adventure. And I also have some other problems too, like trying to keep track of that, remember which rules are pulp, which rules are regular when going back and forth, etc., etc. So I had a better idea. Because I actually have a pretty good pulp game idea, actually. Uh, and it started as a Call of Cthulhu campaign idea, and now it's kind of transitioned into a new system. Hollow Earth Expedition. I do not have the book in front of me. Hollow Earth Expedition is, however, a TTRPG book that will be in my possession very soon. Uh, I do have one on the way, as well as the Secrets of the Surface World supplement. There's two Surface Worlds books. One is a supplement. It's mostly adventures, but it has some supplemental stuff in it, and then one's just entirely a supplement. Whichever one's entirely a supplement. I don't remember if it's Perils of the Surface World or Secrets. I think it's Secrets of the Surface World. That makes way more sense. But I'm getting those two books. That and the rule book. The paperback, because the hardcover is like $100 because it's out of print. I'm getting the paperback and that. And I'm going to write my next Call of Cthulhu game for that system instead so that it can be pure action adventure. Because I want to do it in a post-apocalyptic water world. You remember Waterworld with Kevin Costner? That really long movie that did not deliver, but was actually kind of a good idea. I want to do one where like a giant kaiju. It was originally just going to be Cthulhu, but now I'm going to probably make my own monster. A kaiju comes out of the Hollow Earth, and the Hollow Earth turns out was mostly water, which then just came pouring out onto the surface. So the world's flooded. People are living on boats and rafts. There are like raft cities, and everyone's in boats. And there's monsters in the water. And I also want some like weird science, like a group of people. Like there's this tyrant who rules like this whole section of the ocean, and he has weird science mind control devices on sharks. Which, dude, I looked it up, and that's actually a film. I was like, damn it, everyone's gonna think I'm ripping off this Waterworld shark tyrant movie. And then I was like, wait a second, no one's gonna watch that film. Then I had an idea for like Spinosaurus going swimming around, because we found out Spinosaurus was aquatic, which is pretty cool. And there's like marine reptiles and stuff from the Mesozoic and things in the water, and just all kinds of crazy monsters and etc. And weird fringe groups on raft cities. Yeah, I really want to do that. So I need both those books. I need them, and they're headed my way. Luckily, but I do like pulp stuff, and I mean, there's so many other like TTRPG systems that I didn't even talk about. Like I saw one for like Nordic fantasy or something recently. Uh, in the horror games, you know what? I forgot to talk about Vampire the Masquerade. That's another like horror game, but you're the thing that's horrific. You're the vampire. You're the werewolf. And I think there's a more werewolfy version too, called Werewolf the Apocalypse. I don't really know anything about that system. I only know a bit about Vampire the Masquerade, which I would really love to play. That's one I'd actually like to be a player in, though, is the thing. Because the RPG social contract is kind of, you introduce the system. Yes, I am referencing Seth Skorkowski. You introduce the system, you GM it. Which I think is totally fair. That's so fair. Because you're the one that obviously wants it the most. You're the one introducing it. I think that's fair. And then if someone really likes it and has a good idea for it later, they can play and you can be a player for a bit. And then I intentionally didn't mention Star Trek Adventures and the Star Wars like role-playing game series. I think there's like multiple ones for different eras or something. I don't know. I haven't played the Star Wars. Last time I played Star Wars TTRPG, it was back when it was just Star Wars, the role-playing game, and there weren't all these different versions like Age of Rebellion and stuff. So I have no idea what's going on with all that. Star Trek Adventures looks pretty cool. I didn't mention the Alien one. I feel like the Alien one I would probably just tell Call of Cthulhu-esque stories in space, and I'd barely use xenomorphs actually, because I feel like I would run out of ideas really fast if I was just using xenomorph-esque creatures. Like everyone who's ever made multiple alien projects has run out of ideas really fast. It's true. So I would probably just make that Call of Cthulhu in space. But Call of Cthulhu does have a space setting, but it's like a micro setting. So Call of Cthulhu needs to do a full supplement book for like space-faring far future, because they have this like awesome kind of Hellraiser-y Event Horizon in space idea, and it would really be best to use the Alien TTRPG to run it. Look at me. I'm buying whole TTRPGs for just one campaign idea. I'm insane. I'm actually insane, but I love TTRPGs so much. They're my babies! So, that's it. There's so many systems out there. There's so many systems, and I'll never be able to play them all, which is my biggest regret. But the point is, there's more than D&D in this world. Give it a shot, you know? I don't even really like high fantasy at all. So, lots of these other systems are much better for me. And remember, of course, if you're gonna try one system from this video, Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. Just do it. Chaosium is basically giving adventures away for it. The most popular Call of Cthulhu adventure of all time, the first one ever played and the first one ever released, is available for free on DriveThruRPG. Literally, if you get the quick start rules as a PDF, you get The Haunting, most popular COC adventure ever. I prefer to call them scenarios. Scenario ever, for free. The DM screen comes with like 2 or 3 adventures. This book comes with like 2. The starter set comes with 4. Call of Cthulhu, I think, is the best bang for your buck. I think they give you the most for your money. I prefer skill-based systems, and this is like the skill-based system. D&D is the level class system. Call of Cthulhu is the skill-based system. In my opinion, it doesn't get better than this game. If you're going to check out one thing from here, if it's all the same to you, if every one I described is all the same to you, and you're only going to check out one, this is the boy. All right? So that's it. Thank you all very much for your support. If you want to see my video series where I read the first drafts of all my DM notes for the campaigns I've written, that is on our Patreon as well. All my links in my videos have been consolidated into a link tree. So if you just click on Linktree, you can find all the links to all my stuff, all of it, because they weren't linking correctly in the descriptions on YouTube. They were like getting cut off all the time, and they were just broken links, and I don't know why YouTube kept doing that to me. But I just put them all on Linktree, and now they should all work. So the only 2 links in the description should be Linktree, where everything is, and then just Patreon to make it easier and encourage you to just go straight there. So that's it. Thank you all once again for your support, and I will have to see you all next time. Sorry it was so long, but it was worth it, right? Absolutely, it was not. I'm a terrible content creator. I've never been happy. But I hope you guys tell me which one of these systems looks most interesting to you, and I'll see you later.